It's the Let's Glow show where we interview creative entrepreneurs and business owners and professionals all over the Metro Detroit area and beyond. It's your host, Amanda Sweet, the Creative Fairy Godmother, and I help people get fly, make friends, and save the world through community. And through the Let's Glow show, we get to talk about people's journeys, their stories, how they got to where they are and where they're headed. So you can learn from their life lessons or maybe reach out to one of them and connect with them. So this person today has been around for the first iteration of this show when it was an Instagram Live show. And Adamiak, the Executive Director of Arts and Scraps. Welcome to the show.
Hey, so excited to be here.
So excited to have you. I love you. I'm so glad you're here. I'm honored to be in your presence always.
Same.
And thank you for getting up early. I heard the Stevie Wonder concert was next level.
Just beyond. Oh my gosh. I literally was like, Dale, I'm going to cry. And then he came out on stage, immediately cried. Oh my gosh. It was an amazing show.
I didn't even know he was here performing. I'm like, am I under a rock? Maybe a little bit.
I mean, I think they put the tickets out like not that long ago. And I think they maybe sold out fairly quickly. I'm not sure because then I think there was still tickets like last night, but it looked full. So I don't know.
Okay, so you have like season tickets to concerts? Is that like
No. Dale and I love live music. So we're on like a bunch of sites that notify you when bands are coming. And so we like and when there's like big sales happening and things like that. So
yeah, we love that. Because I'm like every other day you're at a concert.
I know. Well, this summer in particular, because we were out of our house for a year and we, and then pandemic. I mean, it's just been a long time since we've really gone to as many shows as we usually would. And so we kind of overdid it this summer. We're all right with that. It's been a really good summer.
Yeah. I'm like, the memories are more important than the naps.
Yes.
The naps later. I love that. I love that you're always down. Okay. So like, we're going to just get into it. You're an executive director, but you are constantly doing stuff. You're volunteering. You're part of the revamp community. You're going to concerts. You're building your house. You're hanging out with your friends, your family, your husband. Like, how do you fit it all in? I just need to know.
That's a good question. My first answer is actually going to sound a little bit backwards, but I definitely prioritize rest. I've learned over time that you have to find those slow moments. So like we have stuff every day this week. And then I just got sent something by a really close friend that I love. It was like, we have a thing on Sunday. And I was like, I love you so much. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to try. But like, that is my only day of rest for like 2 weeks. Might not be there. So partly Dale and I both just love people, love being around people. It's easy to say yes to, more social things. But also we prioritize rest and we will literally have like couch potato days on like scheduled in. Like you got to find that time where you're going to rejuvenate and things like that. And for me, things that bring me joy, that fill my cup, are often part of that rest time, for better or worse, because my brain is just always moving. But and then the second piece is just I've always been really organized person with my time. Dale benefits from that, but I am like one of those people that's like, I can't live without a calendar organizing everything. So sometimes it's a little obnoxious that I'm like, here, friend, I'm setting up a personal date, but here's my work calendar schedule. But it's like the only way for me to get everything done, and that makes it okay for me because I get to get everything done. So
I love it. And you still show up with like joy and grace and sparkle every single time I see, like, you, like you're just consistent all the time. And I'm just really grateful to be learning from you and to be in your presence and be your friend and be around you. Cause like, I'm like, damn, Anne just got it together.
Like, when I was growing up, my mom would always be like, what are you running from? Because you are always running. What are you running from? And I'm like, I think I'm more running to. I'm running to who I love. I'm running to what I want to do in this world, what I want to create, who I want to be with. So anyway, I always think about that question of like, okay, have you put in your rest? Have you put in, I mean, that really has helped me keep balance, because it is what are you running to instead of what are you running from?
I like that perspective. And Breezy and I have a similar Sunday couch potato day. We used to meal prep. We did that for a little while. Now I'm working with a meal prep company, which I'm like, let me just pay for some of my time back. Because it was like Sunday sleepies, and then it became Sunday cooking day. And I was like, this is not a day off.
No.
So now we're resting again. But it's hard to say no for but all the family things want to happen on Sunday.
Yes.
And I'm training my family.
Yes.
If you invite me to a Sunday activity, if Sunday is the day you're scheduling your birthday, I will not be there. And all of last year, I had to be the bad guy and tell them, like, I will not, if it's on Sunday, I will not be there.
Yeah.
If it's on Saturday, I'll be there. If it's on Friday, if it's Monday through Saturday, I will probably be there.
Right.
And they put up a fit. It was not fun. They were not happy about it. But I think I finally got them to a place where they're no longer inviting me to things on Sunday, because they're not planning things on Sunday anymore, because they also want to be sleeping on Sunday. I'm like, isn't this better for everybody? Sunday, like, don't schedule us to come to your house on Sunday and you live 45 minutes away and you want to start at 2 p.m. or 12 p.m. I'm like, I'm gonna be asleep. Okay.
Well, and that's the thing about boundaries. It ends up being healthier for everybody when we just communicate our needs and work together on it. Yeah.
But it's hard. It was hard at first.
Yes.
It's getting much easier. It's like, they're like, oh, well, they'll be planning behind my back. And my sister will say, they offered Sunday, but I told them that you don't do things on Sundays. So we moved it to Friday. Is that okay? I'm like, thank you. I'll be there. It's like, okay, now they're like advocating for me behind my back, which before they were just talking shit, which is also okay. I'm like, you can be over there talking shit and be mad. I'm gonna be over here chilling. Like, oh my God. Okay. So we're good at boundary setting. We're running towards our goals. Like, I do want to talk about your leadership and how you got to where you are, but I'm curious where you want to go. Like, you said you're running towards something. Are you creating? Like, tell me what the big vision is, because I know you're a big vision person.
Yeah, I think that's always been part of who I am, is that I have at least a general idea of where I'm running. And I may have 7 ideas of where I'm running at once. But if I feel like I'm moving in a positive direction towards one or all of them, then it feels like forward movement to me. And so for me, I'm about to turn 40 this year, which is exciting and also feels a little bit wild. I don't usually get hit by ages, because Dale's 3 years older than me and most of my friends are older than me. And so I always feel like I'm older than I am. So by the time I get to that age, I'm like, I've been 40, right? But for some reason, this one is...
When is your birthday? March
12th.
Okay, I'm putting it in my calendar. Sorry. If I don't do it now, it's not going to happen. And I'm going to be like, damn, I missed Anna's birthday. Okay, wait.
Well, we'll do something, because this is like, a big year. But but I've been realizing, we all like live many, many lives, right? And through that, I like to try and pay attention to the patterns of my life. Like, what have been the things that have been consistently important in my life, consistently the goal, right? Because there's things that change about your goals, but there's always going to be things that are similar. So when I was a kid, I wanted to be a speechwriter. What a weird child, but I wanted to be a speechwriter, and I wanted to write like the speech that would bring everyone together. Like if I was a kid, I would have been like, I want to be Obama's speechwriter, right? Like, and don't worry, shortly after I wanted to be a country music star. So we're talking early years.
They're in the same vein.
Honestly, in the same way that I wanted to make a positive influence in the world. And by the time I got to college, it was like, I don't know what I want to do. I know I love working with kids. I know that I love the city of Detroit, and I know that I want to make a difference in the world, but I have no idea what that looks like. And it's always kind of led me towards an openness that I'm thankful for, because I've done so many weird different things in my life, but it's always been towards that goal. How am I creating the greatest good with my time, whether it's my personal time or my work time? That often does not equate to being paid a lot of money, but that's okay, because we're, I don't know, you learn how to be good at those things, whether it's professionally or personally, and it's okay, as long as you're still able to create good in the world. So even when Dale and I made a lot less money, we still always had, charitable giving as part of that budget, because it was always important to both of us to do that. And so figuring out those ways that you can give back with your time, your talents, different things like that. I've been saying to you about the revamp that it's just fun to solve somebody else's problems with all these skills that I've gained.
So the reason why Ange is saying this, y'all, is because Ange has been like, since last year, she's basically like taking me by the neck and like, come on, we're going. I'm like, I don't want to talk about budgets. I don't want to talk about financials. And I'm like, I want to scale the revamp. We're going to be the biggest clothing swap festival in the world. And you're like, well, we got to make a budget. We got to make it. And I'm like, no, we don't. No, we don't. And you're like, so for those of you that don't know, like, and you hear me saying I'm going to meet with Ange, it's probably her being like, all right, Amanda, what do we got to do? What do we got to do? Because like, you see what we're trying to do. But that's the other part of that, why I'm like so in awe by you, because you're doing this for your organization. You're doing it for your community. You're doing it for the revamp. You're doing it for, and I'm always like, what can I take off your plate? But you're constantly telling me that you're happy to do it. So I'm like, okay, as long as you're happy, as long as you continue to be happy. I just want to make sure, I know, and this is a question for you. So like, as a creative person with many outlets and somebody that's like, I feel the same as you. I'm like running towards, I've had people tell me like, you don't have to prove anything. Like, what are you trying to prove? And I'm like, nothing. I'm just trying to experience the depth of possibilities. I'm always curious about what else is possible. Like, can I push myself in a weird direction? Like, for example, DJing this weekend, Labrie was like, I challenge you to do a DJ set. I feel like you crush it. And I was like, no. And then I started like downloading songs and he's like, are you going to DJ at the Halloween party? And I was like, no. And he's like, I'm challenging you. And I was like, I don't know. And then I started practicing with like the last 2 weeks. But somebody was like, why? You're already doing so many things. And I'm like, why not? Like,
right.
I don't know. I'm just pressing buttons, playing songs that I love, but it's the running towards experiences. But I run towards a lot of other people's experiences too. And I constantly am finding myself in this push-pull, like, yes, I want to do this, but I don't have the bandwidth, and or like, yes to everybody too quickly. So how do you manage what you say yes to, what you take on, how much you participate? Because you're a creative person, you're an artist, you're an adventure expression kind of person. So how do you keep that version of you safe?
That's a good question. I think one of the things that drives me and can get me in trouble sometimes is that there's all these articles that you read about like what people regret at the end of their lives. And 100%, it's always that they regret the things that they didn't do, not the things that they did. And so for me, and Dale has pushed me in this way. He's like a big say yes person. And I'm actually much more cautious and had to learn to be more say yes. Or at least he's like further down the scale than I am, maybe. But there's been times where I've said no to this, that, or the other thing, and it's true. I've never been like, that was definitely the right choice. But I think that there are times where I have to prioritize. So like Dale's really passionate about wrestling. It's not really my thing, but like it's fun to be at like a live performance of wrestling. It's wild. It's like a whole nother culture. It's a whole nother group of people. It's a whole nother lore. Like, yeah, there is definitely something there about that. And I've gone to, I don't know, 2 or 3 with him, and I usually say no. But when I've said yes, I've never regretted it. And so to me, it's a decision of like, how deep do I want to go? Is this a one-time thing because I need to experience it once? Is this a couple times and, I've kind of like seen it in different venues or seen it in different, or because it was just important to my person, right? What are the values behind that yes, right? Like Dale's going to a wrestling thing on Sunday and he has 3 friends going with him. It's at a venue that I've seen. It's not anything that I'm like super pumped about. Yeah. So I said no because I needed that day of rest, right? I don't say yes to wrestling every single time. I may say yes because of the people. I may say yes because of the subject matter. I may say yes because of my passion. But you can't say yes to everything. So you have to find the why behind your yes, I guess.
Mm. And as someone who likes to volunteer or likes to create things, because like on one side, I get the peopling part, I get the family and the relations part. The part that gets me in trouble a lot is like, oh, you have a business idea? Like, let me help you. Oh, you have this, like, you need volunteers? Like, I will do whatever you want. And I'll say, like, what do you need? Whatever you need. Even though I don't, like, in my heart, I mean that. But in the reality, like, sometimes I can't actually commit to that because they'll ask something I don't have the capacity to give them. Yeah. So, like, how do you navigate that space? Because I feel like we are similar in that way. I just feel like you've been on the journey longer than me, so you're better at it. And I'm like,
I think that there's different ways to say yes and different ways to say no. Cool. When I am saying yes, I am defining what my yes looks like. So if I'm saying to someone that has a nonprofit that that's just starting or something like that, I may say yes to like a 1-hour meeting, right? That's like I just want to start a nonprofit, or even a half-hour meeting, honestly, because sometimes even from what they give me, I know what that answer is that they need. Or I meet them, I'm like, yeah, I'm mentoring you now, like, and it's like a full-fledged relationship, etc. But that is because there's more why, right? But the same is true about a no. It can be a no, but it can be a no, but here's some resources. Here's some other places to find those answers. Here's some other places to find what you need. So I don't know that I ever just say no. I'll often have that list of resources to say like, you know what? I would love to help you with that. I actually can't help you with that. However, COACT can help you. Culture Source can help you. The Small Business Association can help. You know what I mean? Like even those general resources to have in your back pocket to just be like, here's where you can go for help. And then if you want to talk about a certain topic, come back to me and then I can give a new yes, right? Or a new no, right? But that way I can prioritize what I have time for in that moment, but also like where that relationship is, where all of my whys come into place, if that helps.
That is very helpful. And I do realize that I do that. So that's a good thing. Now I just have to like acknowledge that it's an option. I know that I'm doing it in real time, but I don't know that it's like for example, when I'm selling at Bamboo and we don't have what they need, I'm never like, okay, sorry, we don't have that available. Bye. Like, I'm like, you should reach out to my friends at Hunt Street or at Incubizo, or here's these 3 different contacts or 4 different places that you can look and find what you're looking for that we don't have to offer. So now I'm glad to just acknowledge that that's an option. That's not like a default or like just something that happens on accident, but it's like, oh, you can say no. And here are all these other humans that can help or other things.
The other thing I've learned from you, which is just asking the question, how can I support you? That question has been life-changing because what you think is going to help you may be putting a bunch of time and energy into something that's not helping. Right. So asking that question, how can I support you, can narrow in the actual need that they have. And that's been really helpful. Just asking the question to narrow things down and then being able to say yes or no based on what they actually need can be really helpful. Because if you're just trying to like come up with your own list.
And helpers do that. People that want to give and givers do that. They'll, I see versions of myself, my younger self, and other young givers around me that are like, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I'm like, you're doing more than you need to. They, like you said, they don't necessarily want this. And this kind of helps me come back to the topic of arts and scraps and being a leader and an executive director. Like, it wasn't until I started managing at Bamboo and like grew my leadership skills that I'm like I can't give them all the answers, and they don't want all the answers, and they don't necessarily want what I'm dishing out. Like they don't necessarily want what I think is the solution. So asking first is always a great place to start, because in my mind and from my experience, I'm like, okay, well, I got Rolodexes, encyclopedias, we've got the whole internet at our and I know all of this stuff, but you need this stuff, And so anyway, so being an executive director of Arts and Scraps, tell me a story about what that's like. Tell me like how you got there. What is Arts and Scraps for those of us that don't know? Yeah. And then we'll talk a little bit about like your leadership.
So Arts and Scraps was started in 1989 and started by a former teacher. And she was always like ahead of the curve. She was always thinking further ahead than most people that I know. So like she was reusing and recycling before that was really a thing. She had us on the internet before that was really a thing. She had us on social media before that was really a thing. Like to the point that like we have a person that started the Arts and Scraps page because it started with groups, but you had to start it with a person. So there's a person named Arts Scraps that still has to exist because it's tied to, I mean, like, oh my gosh, sometimes it gets us into trouble because you start in like the early iterations. Anyway, she decided as a teacher who was married to someone that was working in the automotive industry, there's all this stuff that's kind of falling off the assembly line that could be used in classrooms, that I could be using in my classroom, other people could be using in their classrooms. And she decided to gather those materials up and make them available to teachers. And very quickly, it was in the basement of a church, very small, space, but very quickly it outgrew even just her wildest expectations. And artists and entrepreneurs and families, all kinds of people started coming to this space to get materials to be creative with. And so about 5 years in, I think they were in their second location at that point, people started to say like, you're a teacher and you brought all this weird stuff together. Can you tell us how to teach with this stuff? Because it's very unusual. It's like literally automotive cast-offs and things like that, all the way to, things from people's, craft rooms, attics, basements, all that kind of stuff. And so she started putting together curriculum. And again, she was ahead of the curve. She was doing STEM before STEM was a thing. She was doing project-based and inquiry-based learning before any of that was a thing. In fact, literally, I'm doing research now on the effects of inquiry-based and project-based programming. And those studies did not even start until like the late 90s. She just was a very innovative person. And what she found was that the education was really making a difference in these kids' lives, even though they were only with her for like an hour. It really was opening their brains in these really interesting ways. I talk a lot about the fourth grade slump. By fourth grade, you often decide if you're creative or not, if you're good at math or not, if you're, going to be a music kid, if you're going to be an art kid, if you're going to be a STEM kid. And what she found was that lots of kids have been told even by fourth or fifth grade that they couldn't draw or they couldn't paint. And so then they were automatically, and you hear this from adults all the time, I'm not a creative person. And no one's ever told anyone that they can't make a bug out of recycled materials. And so, and so kids had this openness, and adults honestly have this openness with recycled materials that they don't have with traditional mediums. And so that would open their brains. And then she'd bring in this really innovative curriculum based on STEM, backgrounds and state and national standards, and bring those two pieces together and create this incredible experience. So over the years, we got to the place where we were serving like 350 clients a year, most of them just once per year. And Peg was finally able to retire. And what we found was that the store had grown into its own community where people were making lifelong friendships and talking about what they were making and all these different things. And there was this beautiful organic relationship building happening. And on the program side, we were getting asked to do longer and longer programming. Can you do 4 weeks? Can you do 12 weeks? Can you do 24 weeks? Can you do a whole year, 2 years? So after Peg retired, we started to explore some of those things. And we really had to build the infrastructure of Arts and Scraps to do that. And so it's taken us really almost 10 years to get to where we are now. But after she retired and I began as executive director, I set goals for us to be able to do community events and pay artists what they should be paid, and to do extended programming and be able to pay our our instructors more than we were paying them, and have jobs that have the capacity that they should have. And we're not 100% there yet, honestly. Like, we're still working in that direction. Part of that is, as you build something, you learn. And so you learn, like, oh, there's these additional needs we did not know that we would need. And sometimes you can build backwards and say, like, okay, there's also things we don't need. So like our community events, we've really simplified in some ways, so that we can have better programming that's a lighter lift and can be worked into the existing infrastructure of Arts and Scraps. But then on the flip side, our programming has just gotten more and more in depth, because we're realizing, like, okay, now that we're in these kids' lives for like a year, 2 years, 3 years, there's different needs. And so we're going to need to staff it differently. We're going to need to find resources like sponsorships and things like that to make sure that we're serving kids how they need to be served, should be served. So anyway, it's funny talking about budgets and things like that, because I just found my budget that I built that was I built it in 2019 for 2022 to 2023. Okay. Or no, 2020 to 2023. It was a 3-year budget.
Okay.
And we just accomplished all of those goals this year. So like a year late, but like there was a global pandemic. That's pretty good.
I mean, a year late on like a long-term vision plan, like, is not out of the realm. Like, that is beautiful. That is check, accomplished.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? That's beautiful.
Yes. And so now it's helped us realize how to build something like that, how to adjust how we do that. And I literally am building a 5-year budget now, which I know by year 5 it'll be way off, but that's okay, because we have a direction of where we're going. We have conversations we can have with funders and donors and sponsors to say, like, listen, this is where we're going and you need to get on board, right? And so we can build that future of Arts and Scraps that's going to be even more in depth. What we've realized is Arts and Scraps previously had huge impact, but it was really, really wide and thin, which was okay, especially for being run mostly by volunteers and things like that. But now we really want to build that relationship. We want to go deep. And so to build that, we have to change how we work. We have to give more thought to how we're paying people, right? And how we're structuring the organization, so that if we're really going to say we're going to build deep relationship with our community, we have to be willing and able to build deep relationship with our staff. I say all the time, wherever you're not living your mission, that's where you're going to run into trouble. And so if we're not living our mission with our staff, that's where we're going to run into trouble. If we're living it with our community, with those we serve, but we're not living it with the people that are on our staff, we're not going to be okay. So we have to find ways to build into those places where we're not quite accomplishing the goal that we say we're going to accomplish. So anyway, did I even answer your question?
Yes, you did. And I have many more questions.
Cool.
So, okay, you and I did a budget exercise recently for the revamp, for a proposal that we're submitting. And doing it with you was so much simpler than doing it by myself. And I just want you to talk a little bit through, like, for those of us that are at the beginning, like we're just starting our organizations or we're at the forefront of it, like, how do you make it feel less daunting? Because you're like, I love budgets. And I'm like, why? Like, why do you love budgets? And then like you going through it, I was like, oh, like we're just manifesting. We're just goal setting with like realistic expectations.
Yes.
But like every time I've tried to do it before for a class or for whatever, I'm like, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what the answer is. And then sitting with you, I'm like, oh, there is no answer. We're just making an educated guess. Like this is just a rough draft of like potential.
Yes.
But you broke it down so easy. You're like, oh, well, maybe we'll get 300 people. We're charging $20. This is what we think we're going to get in like income. And I'm like, oh, just 300 times 20. That's it. Like,
Yeah.
that's all we have to do. Okay. And then like base all of our expenses on that number. I'm like, oh, okay. Like I can see how this is going to be a little bit fun. But like for those of us that are at the beginning of our journeys and are in the work and are scared of working on our organizations, what advice do you have for us?
The first advice I have for you is surround yourself with great people, because I don't have a master's degree. I learned all of this from other wonderful people that were willing and able to share their time and talents with me. But I will say, like, yeah, that's budgets. It's an educated guess. But there's two different ways that you can think about budgets. The first is that dream budget, when you're looking at how big you can go, when you're looking at what the possibilities are and all those different things. And that way you really want to make educated guesses for sure. But if you're going to be giving something to a foundation or a funder or someone that's going to sponsor or things like that, you want to put forth your full dream, right? You don't want to limit yourself. You want to be truthful. You want to be transparent. You want to be, smart about it, right? You're not going to just throw numbers out there to throw numbers out there. Yeah. But you want to put your full dream out there. The second kind of budget is the budget you have to live under. And that is going to be different, right? So once you know what your expenses are, once you get closer, right? So like we talked about that 3 or 5 year budget. Next year, we're so much closer to, we know so much more about, we are going to be able to live under a 1 year budget that comes from that 3 year budget, right? Because we have more information about it. But as you get further out, it's more guesswork, right? And really, budgets are guesswork. And some people like don't even like doing budgets because it is so unpredictable. Yeah. But I feel like you're not going to get to your goal if you don't have that path carved out and identified. Yeah. And so to me, you have to understand both. And the one that you're going to live under, you want to make that as conservative as possible. So you want to say like, all right, what is maybe not worst case scenario, but educated guess worst case scenario, so that you can say like, okay, if I only have this much income coming in, what am I going to do on the other side to deal with my expenses, right? And then if you do better than that on the income side, awesome. You can do better than that on the expense side, or you can make some money if you're not a nonprofit, right? I mean, nonprofits can make money, but you know what I mean? So the simplest way to think about budgets, and maybe this can make it a little bit less intimidating for folks, is there's just two sides of it. There's income and there's expense. And your income, you're just going to think about the categories of money coming in. And maybe there's only one. Maybe it's a retail store. There's only one thing that you're going to sell, your widget or whatever they use in those finance classes. Yeah. But usually there's more than one. And so breaking that out a little bit, don't get too nuanced with it. But if there's like 3 categories, right? So sponsorships and bag sales and grants or something like that, right? And then on the expense side, you really do want to think it out as granularly as you can. So think about, I want to pay photographers. I want to pay workshop leaders. I want to pay the rent for the event. I want to pay the whatever it is. And for those, you're going to have more detail, which is why you can get more granular. And then it is just income minus expenses. And then you see where you land. And so my rule of thumb is to always try and at least break even, especially in a nonprofit. But you really want to think about what your goal is for your revenue, for your net revenue. So income minus expense is your net revenue.
Yeah.
And for some, it may be breaking even, and that's great. And for others, that might not be okay, depending on the business that you're in or whatever it is. But you have to identify what that goal is. And then you got to go back and say, okay, I either have to adjust expenses or I have to adjust income, right?
Sure.
And I will say, like, as a leader that has led through financial crisis 3 times now, the one piece of advice that I will give that is not always a popular opinion, but I will give it anyway, because I think that it has served me well, is that you will never work your way out of a financial crisis by eliminating people. Eliminating people eliminates possibilities for income. And so even as hard as it can be, Arts and Scraps has been through 3 financial emergencies, none of them of our own volition.
Sure.
And we have never laid anybody off, because that was not going to help us bring Arts and Scraps back to health. There's definitely people that would disagree with me on this. And we're at a really small scale, so that makes it more possible. Yes. But I would say you have to think about both sides of that equation, no matter the decision that you're making. Hopefully that's helpful.
Very helpful. An analogy or like a metaphor came to mind. Like I see like a budget is like a flashlight in the dark woods. Yes. And the 3 to 5 years is the light that's coming out from this flashlight, which at the end of it is still unknown, but you're walking in the most bright step at a time, and it just evolves as it goes. So it's just an educated guess. And I don't know why I put so much like weird energy around it. Like, I don't want to, but like working with you through it, I'm like, oh, we need to do this. And we get to do this because now we're talking about the income.
Yeah.
And, you know, as someone who, so like the revamp, I started, like, we just started, we had no plan. Yeah. And for those of you out there that are like, I want to do a thing, but I need to do all this stuff. Like, I'm in a position to say, like, now we're planning. Had I started planning what we're building right now 5 years ago, I would have never did it. I would have never done it. I would have been like, this is too big. This is too much. I'm not capable of this. So just the act of doing taught me so much. Yes. And I could have never imagined this is what we're building, right? Beautiful festival. Like, it just was not, they were not in the same category. It was like, oh, it's just bringing people together, like I did in my living room to share class. Like, that was not this festival that's becoming a business and will eventually hire people and teach people and mentor people and continue to give to people, was not what I was building. So my suggestion to you guys is, if you're overthinking the budget, the business planning, the whatever, like, you will find people like Ange that come into your life at the right time after you're already building something in the wild. Like, get out there, try stuff, get weird, build the animal, like build the little bug out of cardboard first before you start talking about like a whole jungle of animals, because you can only get to the jungle by building each animal at a time, right? Yep. So like that, I'm glad that we're doing this now, and I feel like I'm finally equipped to do it now.
Yes.
You would have talked to me like 5 years ago, even a year ago, I mean, you did talk to me about this a year ago, and I was like, not ready. Ready.
Part of that is that your past informs your future, right? Having an understanding and an eye towards learning while you're doing is going to help you set up a much smarter future, right? When I set up that budget in 2020 and had no clue that a pandemic was going to happen, the amount of things that I learned since 2020 is wild. And I built this new budget very, very differently because of all the things that I've learned. And it's much more complex than it ever would have been because of the things that I've learned. So always keeping that eye towards, maybe you don't have a full budget. Maybe you don't have a full business plan. Maybe you don't have, but that's okay. That is okay. But make sure that you're still keeping that eye towards learning make sure you're keeping that eye towards what your goal is, what your mission is, whatever your community wants, whatever your community needs, whatever those factors are for you, what your why is. Yeah. Always be learning towards that why, so that when you are ready for the next step, I mean, that's the other piece that's kind of my secret ingredient, is like, I never say no to the meeting, because I might not need that meeting now, but I might need that meeting in 3 years, right? Like, you and I met in 2018?
Yeah, okay. Well, let's just break that down, because we are in a full circle. So I was just in Denton, Texas over the weekend, speaking at the University of North Texas for Fierce Lab Live. Shout out to Tara Wilson. And that's where we started the revamp. Like, Labrie, we were still dating. We were like we had just publicly announced. We just went Facebook official, and he was like, I got a job offer in Texas. A lot of people think I'm from Texas. I'm not from Texas, born and raised in Michigan. And he was like, I got a job offer in Texas. And I was like, okay, when do you leave? No. Because I knew his career path. I knew what he was doing for work. I knew he was feeling a little he could be bigger, right? So I was like, you need to go. I had just graduated college. And he was like, do you want to come? And I was like, hell yeah. And he was like, are you sure? I was like, yeah. And he's like, you need to think about it. We're moving across the country. I'm like, yes.
Say yes.
Say less. When do we leave? 3 months. Cool. But yeah, when I got there, I was like, I have no friends. I have no, I hate the clothes here. I like all of this stuff. So that's where the revamp started. And it started because I needed friends, and I needed to get fly, and I needed a reason to just participate in community. And I had to build it myself. I needed to build it myself. For whatever reason, I wasn't finding what I needed out of the other organizations. And I was like, I think I could do this. And through building the revamp, I got hooked up with this creative reuse location called Scrap, which is no longer a Scrap Den, is no longer active anymore. They closed down, and another group, a group of their volunteers, purchased it and rebranded it, which is pretty cool. But they brought me on. We started doing photo shoots there. I emceed their fashion show, and then I got on their board. And then next thing I know, I see this Instagram message, Instagram follow, like. That's so cool. This is so cute. Are you from Detroit? I was like, yeah. When are you moving back? I'm like, I don't know. I'll be back this weekend, whatever, blah, blah, blah. You're like, come to Arts and Scraps. And I was like, okay. I'm like, I don't know who this person is. I didn't do any research. I was just like, okay, let me just roll up on this person. And I was like, I'm here to see Ang. Oh, okay, you're here to say Ange. I'm like, okay, yeah. I went into the chat room at Arts and Scraps, and there you were with your beautiful face and your beautiful energy, and you were like, hi, when are you coming back to Detroit? I'm going to steal you when you get here. I was like, okay.
Well, the part you don't know about that story, and you're gonna, I think you'll like this, is that I had another mentor that had challenged me to reach out to influencers on Instagram. And it again is that just say yes mentality of it doesn't have to be somebody that's 1 million followers, right? Maybe it's somebody that's 30,000 followers or 5,000 followers, but they're in your area, of your passion, of your, your mission, etc. And so I think I had sent out, I think they challenged me to send 30 messages to people. I think I heard back from maybe 5, but you were one of them. And I think you were one of 3 that actually met with me. And me saying yes to 30 meetings that led to 3 meetings. Yeah. All 3 of those ended up being fruitful either in that moment or later on. And so, it always ties back to you gotta just, I always take the meeting, even if it's not going to be that day. Brilliant in Detroit is another one. That's who we do all of our programming with. We're at 14 different sites doing after school programming now. We said yes to a meeting in 2018, and we met and we said, man, we really like those people. They're really great. But we did not have anything in that moment that was going to be a matchup for us to work together. But then 2020 came, and that is how we survived, was working with Brilliant Detroit to, get creative reuse kits out to the kids while they were stuck in their homes. So, doing that work to not only take meetings, but also keep relationship going, right? So that when the time is right, and there is alignment for both parties, you can work together and move things forward. So, anyway.
And something that came to mind that I feel like I need to say is because I do say yes to a lot of meetings. I'm also a very intuitive person. And if it doesn't feel aligned, that's not a loss. And that's not a bad thing. And that doesn't mean you have to squash the relationship, but that doesn't mean you have to stoke the fire either. And not every person is going to be the right person. Not every organization is going to be the right fit. But every call, you learn something about yourself, about where you're going, about other person, other opportunities, other resources. I've taken some meetings that I'm just feeling cringy the whole time. Oh my God, this person called me to talk about themselves for 2 hours. Okay, well, do you feel good now? Okay, have a good day. Talk to you later. But that taught me about my patience, what I'm willing and not willing to listen to. Yeah. What I can do better next time if I find myself in a situation that doesn't feel mutually beneficial. So it always is an opportunity to learn something, And I say this a lot too. I'm in a business class right now, and I'm feeling crunchy about the bandwidth that I have. And I feel like I found a limit, and I'm working through, do I take a step back? Do I power through? What does powering through do for me? I've powered through in the past. I've also jumped off a cliff and just ghosted everybody in the past. I've done both. Is there a way I could do something in the middle? Communicate my needs or my challenges, whatever the case may be. But it's all everything is figure outable, but everything is a learning opportunity. And we're running out of time really quickly, and this is not enough. An hour is not enough time. It never is enough time for us. But I just want to touch on the learning piece. You said you don't have a master's, but you're now in an executive director position. For those of us that are curious about going that route, what advice do you have?
The route of becoming an executive director or leader?
Leader without the formal college education route. Because I know a lot of really talented, very smart people that don't have degrees and are kind of and I know a master's degree and a bachelor's degree is different, but even still, no degree or no continued degree.
Yeah. I would say, so this is something I honestly still struggle with. I still sometimes think about, should I get a master's? Partially, it is unfortunately earning power. And so if I were ever to move on into another executive director position, they're more likely to pay me less. They're less likely to hire me. But one of the things that you should know, anybody should know, is that 7 years of experience in anything is considered the same as a degree, whether it is a bachelor's degree level or a master's degree level. Anybody worth their snuff is going to look at 7 years of experience and know that equation, that is the same as getting a degree. So keep that in mind. The other thing I'll say is that, when I think about myself, my situation, and others, if I'm applying someone, they don't want to hire me because I don't have a master's degree, I probably don't want to work for them.
Yeah.
It's of more value to me. And this is how we hire at Arts and Scraps. What your experience is, what your passion is, what your talent is, and that could be connected to a degree, but it also could not be connected to a degree. And alignment with the position itself. There are some jobs out there that you have to have a degree for. You just
you're building bridges and you're cutting, looking in people's hearts and brains and stuff like that. I get that.
Yes.
But
there's lots of things out there you don't need a degree for. And honestly, nowadays, there's a lot of things that you don't need a degree for that make more money than things that you do need a degree for. So don't let that stop you, is what I'm saying. Dale doesn't have a degree. And for a long time, actually, he's like crazy, crazy smart. So it always drove me nuts because I was always raised, you got to get a college degree, and got my own.
Yeah.
And so when I actually moved back from college, it was cheaper for me to get a associate's degree from Macomb Community College and stay on my parents' insurance. That's how it worked back then. You could only be on your parents' insurance if you were going to school full time, than it was to pay for my own insurance. So I ended up getting an associate's degree after my bachelor's, which is very wild. But I feel like I actually learned more at Macomb Community College than I did at like my giant, fancy 4-year degree, because it was people that worked in the field and then were teaching it. So even if you're just curious about something, go to a community college and take a class. Because there are going to be people that are actively working and want to give you that practical knowledge. But I literally challenged Dale. I was like, just take one semester. Just take one semester and see how you do and see how you feel and da-da-da. And it just drives Dale crazy. Bureaucracy in any way, shape, or form. Jumping through hoops is just not his thing. And he took one semester and he got all A's, and he like barely studied because that's Dale. And I'm like studying my butt off and getting like B's and C's.
Yeah.
And he got done. I'm like, okay, so are you going to get a degree? And he's like, no. He's like, this was all Googleable. He like took the hardest classes he could. He's like, for me and how I learned, this was all Googleable. And if somebody doesn't want to hire me because I don't have a degree, I don't want to work there. And I was like, yes.
That's fair. That is fair.
And now he works for a tech company, a tech startup, and is running a team of East Coast and Europe. And I mean, like, so there's a million things you can do out there. And really you want to look more for alignment with your values, and remember that your experience is very important, especially to the right people. So
100%. And I hear so many times, like, I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs or creative people that are like trying to get back into the workforce. I'm like, well, I don't really have a lot of experience, or I don't have a degree or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but you owned your own business for 3 years. Like, yeah, but I'm like, you had clientele, you were like making money, you were like keeping the books, you were doing your social, you were doing customer outreach, you were doing like business development. And they're like, yeah, but like, I'm like, that is huge. That is independent, self-starting, self-sufficient, doing all of the things, I'm just like, that is valuable, or somebody was like, I'm a nanny. And I'm like, you're directing a household of humans. Like, this is like, your experience is not lessened based on the size of the institution. Like, the institution doesn't change the work and the things that you're learning, or the people that you're meeting, but even still, everything is valuable. Everyone is valuable. All of these skills add value. And it's all about how you present them. Like, how are you proving that this cup is special?
Right.
Anyway.
And to be fair, to be completely honest and transparent, it's also who you're talking to, because there are some people that will not see value in being a nanny. Household, they will not see the value in the size of what you're working with. But guess what? Move along. There are many other people that will.
Exactly.
It's not usually about you.
Yes, it's about
it is about what's going on in their world.
100%. It will always be with those kinds of people. And that's when you learn how to trust your gut. Like, because you will feel that in your body, Anyway, so listen to your guts, listen to your body, listen to your intuition, and trust that your experience is valuable at any level.
Yes.
All right, Miss Ange, what's one last piece of advice you have for our listeners?
Oh man. Honestly, I think that last piece is the best piece. Trusting yourself. Trust yourself, trust your intuition, trust what you're taking in and what your body is saying about that, your brain is saying about that. When I met Amanda in 2018, I knew that was going to be a connection that changed my world, Arts and Scraps' world, etc. Even if it wasn't immediately, I knew it was going to be that. And man, I was right. And that happens a lot, right? we don't get it right 100% of the time, and that's okay too. But trust yourself, trust your intuition. I was thinking this morning about mistakes that I've made, because sometimes those are fun to talk about.
Yeah.
And I was laughing in my head about some of the mistakes that I made, because they're very, very silly, but I don't regret a single one of them, because I followed my intuition. And even if it turned into nothing, I learned things along the way, and I made new connections and had a laugh. I mean, really and truly, if you're working towards that greater goal, that greater mission, your why, and learning along the way, then it's all value add. So just trust yourself.
I love you so much. Oh my gosh. I knew it was going to be juicy. I knew it was going to be good, but I just didn't know what we were going to talk about. But I love all of it. I am so
Same.
grateful for you, Ange. Like, you changed my life too. And every single time we get closer, I'm like, damn, Ange is so freaking cool. And me and Breezy will be like, we love Ange and Dale. It just like every time we spend time with you and I spend time with you directly, like I leave feeling like, literally, this is going to sound weird, but I leave feeling like physically warm. Like, I feel it in like my face and my ears and my body, and like happy and joyful and seen and understood. I'm just so grateful for you.
Well, I think that you bring an authenticity to the world that makes it easier for others to be themselves as well. And I'm so thankful for you as well. I think that, you know, the things that we've learned together from each other, all those different things have not only strengthened us as individuals, but I think strengthened our relationship and what we're doing in the world. So I know I always say same, and that's really just, it's not enough, but it is just true.
And I like that Dale has been, you know, coining us as like, you know, Pinky in the Brain, and we switch roles from time to time. And we go in and out. Because like, what are you guys up to? Whenever anybody asks, like specifically our husbands, like, yeah, we're planning to take over the world. Like that is what we're working on. Like
Exactly.
meeting notes and everything. Like, okay, we're gonna buy up the block and we're gonna create all of this opportunity for people.
Yes.
So just know, if y'all ever see us out and about, like, feel free to sit in, but just know we're master planning. Okay. We're master doing. We are doing the thing.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much. Tell everybody where they can find you on socials, Arts and Scraps, where can they DM and reach out and schedule the meeting?
Yes. Well, artsandscraps.org has all the information about Arts and Scraps, how you can donate, how you can volunteer, how you can get involved, how you can sponsor, all those different things. And Arts and Scraps is on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn primarily. So those are the best places to find Arts and Scraps. And come see us. Come visit us on the Far East Side. We're at Harper 94. And we'd love, love, love to see you, whether at an event or just shopping on a Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. We'd love to have you. And if you want to chat with me, LinkedIn or Instagram, LinkedIn, just Ang Adamiak, and on Instagram, it's Detroit Trogna, which that's got a whole story behind it and my maiden name, and it's a whole mess. So sorry about having to figure that out, but I'm sure it'll be in the show notes or something.
It'll be linked below.
There we go.
Oh, I love it. And if you haven't been to Arts and Scraps, you need to go. If you're like into thrifting or crafting or art or just like oddities too, like you will enjoy your time at Arts and Scraps. Like just exploring. It's like an adventure. You walk in there, you don't know what you're going to find. I like to explain Arts and Scraps, the store, as like a thrift store for crafters. Yes. And it's like, donate your scraps, donate your craft leftovers. Like it is like a wonderland for people who are into crafting. And quick side story. When I first started learning how to sew, so Arts and Scraps hires Labrie quite often to DJ some of their like Saturday parties, and they're usually doing a big sale. So one of them, my mother-in-law and I were there, and she's like, we're going to buy everything you need to sew, and everything I buy, you have to match the amount of money I spend. This woman spent $50 at Arts and Scraps,
which is hard to do
on a sale day. Okay.
Yes.
So she's like, you now need to match me. We were there for Breezy's whole set. It was like 4 hours plus. And we spent $100 at Arts and Scraps. And I feel very proud of that. We could have opened up like a design studio in my basement. And I was like, I
Yes.
got it. I don't know what any of this is. So I had to
Yes.
like take a class. Anyway.
Yes. For context, everybody, a grocery bag of materials is $8
On a regular day.
On a regular day, yes. So it is hard to spend $50
let alone $100. I have
amazing
buttons, and I've got so much like thread and tools and supplies that I don't even know how to use. I've got two like suitcases that I got from Arts and Scraps. That was how I like, kind of rounded up those dollars, filled with patterns, vintage patterns that I will never be able to fit in because they're built for vintage bodies. And after I learned how to sew, I'm like, oh wait, I need a master's degree to be able to size this up properly to fit my body. Anyway. So if you haven't gone to Arts and Scraps and you're into crafting and thrifting and like seeing a new side of the city, you need to go. And then two little quick announcements. We are doing our Counterculture Computer Club closing gallery this Saturday at Ideation Orange. It's a Halloween party. I will be doing my first ever DJ set. So catch me at 11:30. We're closing out the day and be prepared to sweat because that is my plan, to make you dance. And so that's going to be on Saturday. The proceeds are going to the Live Outreach for their toiletry drive for the fall. And we have officially launched our dates for the first swap. So we're looking for brand ambassadors. So if you're interested in the swap, have volunteered before, come to hang out, please consider doing our brand ambassador program. We're shooting in November. You'll get to meet Ange there. You get to take pictures and meet a bunch of other beautiful creators. We'll make a bunch of dope content. And then the swap is coming in January. So I'll put the revamp details below. Submit your application because we want to create with you. Thank you all so much. We'll see you back next week for another Let's Glow show where we talk to another creative entrepreneur and professional. I love you all. We'll see you next week. Bye.